States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Because all the commissioners are here, we have to follow the formal meeting protocols. And so we will have a public comment, not related items on the agenda. Hearing none, seeing none, we're gonna move to the next item, which is the old jail. Mark Gifford got a call from, I think, Lynn Anderson about paint and about the porch roof falling in, etc. So this summer, Mark went out and decided we better figure out what we're gonna do with the old jail. And from there, Mark hired a historic preservation expert who used to be at the Historic Society of Michigan, State of Michigan employee, who has her own business, and she came up and did a pretty extensive survey, which is Michelle's going to talk to us about before we start asking for questions, etc. What shall we do with the old jail is the topic tonight, and all the input counts, and there's been, trust me, no decisions made on any of it. Michelle?
So if you went on the tour, this is kind of just our brief agenda. You saw, I don't think, let me darken it or get them. There we go. We're just going to do a quick overview of the history, current conditions, conclusions, and recommendations from the report that we had, which is also now available on our website. They just posted it. And then also some options that the community has. And then we'll move into the community input session. So my section won't take very long. Hopefully most of you got the opportunity to walk through the old jail and see how beautiful it is. It is a jail kit, which is kind of unique. That was constructed in 1893. In 1897, they added the sheriff's residence to the kit, and it served as the jail for Mecosta County until 1965 for both the residents of the sheriff's family and the inmates. It's Queen Anne style architecture, and the architect we talked to said it was the only jail that she was aware of in the state that was of the Queen Anne architecture style. In 1980, it was registered as the state historic preservation with the department. It has not been registered in the National Registry. Current conditions, so the east elevation, which is the main entrance to the jail, there's water channeling across the masonry on the facade. There's structural issues with the porch. Obviously you saw that. We have it braced up right now so that it doesn't fall. There's a lot of vegetation around the foundation, which is causing damage to mortar, and the mortar that has been used to repair some of the damage is not compatible with the original, so it's causing more failure. And then there's also failing paint on the turrets. The west elevation, a lot of the same damage. Vegetation against the foundation, vegetation against the building, and water channeling across the masonry on the facade. So you can see in some spots where the water is channeling, like above that window, which is causing problems with the facade and the sills and everything. North elevation, there's a lot of vegetation against the foundation and even going up into the building and the window sills. It's causing, the vegetation causes the water to hold, or the bricks to hold water, and then they bust and crack. So that's why that is a problem. The water channeling across the masonry, failing mortar, not compatible, paint failure on the gable trim, and the window sills are also failing in a lot of that area. And you can see like the water damage coming down the roof, and you can see a lot of the damage to the brick on the chimney. So those were some of the things she pointed out when she was here. The south the elevation has a lot of water damage, and you can see like all of that is water damage coming across. And then there's also more vegetation against the foundation and the basement windows, which are starting to rot. In the interior, the interior is actually in pretty good shape. There's areas where water is getting in that's causing plaster deterioration, mostly on the north elevation. And then there's also some paint deterioration on those metal ceilings that we saw that need to be repaired. But for the most part, if we can keep it dry, the interior of the building is in pretty good shape. So the architect that came through with us in the report put her recommendations into things that we need to do right away to save the building, or that need to be done to make sure that it lasts, things that we should be doing in the future, and then things that can wait until later. The priorities were to gutter the roof system and provide downspouts. That will help a lot with the water damage that's just moving across the facade right now. Obviously, the porch is a big one. Fixing the gaps in the existing mortar and using the correct type of mortar so it doesn't break down the mortar that's already there. Egress windows, removing vegetation from the walls and from the foundation, so pulling the vegetation back so it's not sitting so close to the building, and then also inspect and repair our windows and our sills where there's damage. The next step would be to do inspections on all of our mechanical, electrical, lighting, plumbing for efficiency and code requirement updates where necessary. And then later, once your building envelope is secure, water's not coming in, the foundation's in good shape, your windows are updated, get to your flooring, interior walls, and things like that, and grading the lot. So that's pretty much the synopsis of her report. She went into a lot more detail and used a lot more architecture language to describe some of the things that we should do, but that's a pretty good synopsis. Right now we have a couple options that are available to us. One is to put it on the National Registry. So if you do this, this provides us some opportunity for tax incentives, which we don't necessarily get tax incentives because we don't pay taxes on it. But we could sell those tax credits to other developers and use the money then to put into the old jail. We can maintain ownership and lease the property out. We can sell the property to a private developer. If it's on the historic registry, then they can use tax incentives to develop it, or we can do nothing. So those are really the options that the city sees that we have. We're obviously open to all options and ideas. I think the mayor will probably take over, but one thing we need to decide is, should we save it? And then if we do save it, what do we see it becoming?
Thanks, Michelle. Questions for Michelle directly first? Seeing none, we'll proceed. John, what year did you all fundraise and then repair most of the slate roof? Do you remember about when that was? You raised a lot of money to put that slate on there, I know.
Huge yard sales twice a year. And it was over a 5-6 year period. I have a hard time with it. It's gotta be,
20 years ago, maybe? Yeah. But it doesn't seem to be leaking all that badly inside. I mean, there's some areas that aren't great, but it's holding.
yeah.
We're gonna open up to everything. There's a group of people who would like us to demolish and clear the lot. That's a group of folks who thinks that it's not worth spending the money. We've talked to many different people as they heard this was coming. So you're here today to talk to all of us, to each other, about what should we do with the old jail. And I'm gonna open it wide open. Just stand and please say your name and where you live so Tammy can get it in the minutes. If you need a microphone, go up to the podium so we all can hear you. But if you're embarrassed to go to the podium, don't bother. Anyone, raise your hands. Let's go. Yes, please.
Marilyn Jablonski, and I live in the city. It's unique. It's something unique, and Big Rapids doesn't have a lot of historical, beautiful buildings. So I think it's something that we should definitely keep. And I, for one, would be volunteer to come and start pulling out vegetation. I mean, I think that's something simple that everybody could do, is just come and clear out vegetation from around the jail.
Thank you. Keep rolling, folks. Please, Lynn.
I'm Linda Beulah, and I'm from the old jail quilters, but we're actually Quilts of Valor. We just use the old jail. We have since our inception. We use the little wing, and we also use a jail cell to store our materials. So keeping the old jail would be helpful to us. I think we could, I have no idea how much we're looking at to save it, but if we could save it, it is a very beautiful building. It's being used by the community currently, by us and others. I know AA goes in there for meetings and stuff, and so it's valuable to the community. We just have to look to see how much cost and what will work.
Thank you. Lynn Anderson, who is on the Historic Preservation Committee and knows the jail almost better than anyone. Lynn?
I've forgotten more than, I just wanted to say that we have taken off the vines that went all the way up it's scheduled for the garden club to do the area around it. Any help we would appreciate.
Thank you. Please.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Knowles. I live here in Big Rapids. My idea, and I mentioned it to the mayor, was in keeping with the jail. I am a recovering alcoholic myself, and I do go to meetings there, but a reentry program from jails or prisons or things like that, something to help people stay out of jail, across the street, I don't know, or substance abuse counseling. We really need that in this area. So that was just something along the lines that I thought of. I don't know where the money would come from or grants, but I'd be willing to help find it.
Thank you. John? You are the old jail too, you and Lynn. Anything? Okay, please, in the back. Zach.
Lyman, resident of Big Rapids, my wife Melinda. What I would say would be good for the jail, yeah, it's an old building, yeah, there's a lot of history to it, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's gotta get done to it. But it's not the fact of it can't be fixed, it can be fixed. Restoration. And the restoration of all this, like, I don't remember your name. Jennifer said, the treatment centers, but you can also have it as a treatment center, but you can also restore it to the fact of what it used to be, but in newer age. I don't know if you understand any of that. But restore it to be something for the homeless community. I know most of the people don't really like the homeless community. They think they're all this, they're drugs, they're that, alcoholics, all that. But how about you bring something to and to forth with the table, to bring it to a homeless shelter plus treatment center, so we can get homeless people off the street, so we can get people the help they need. And the fact of you all want to tear it down, that's just erasing history. That's erasing that's like erasing the Statue of Liberty. That's erasing the Twin Towers that got knocked down. What happened to them? They all just crumbled. They all made memories. But this is a house that has so much potential. And with construction, I can help with that. With landscaping, I can help with that. Everything that has to get done with that house, I can help you guys. And I don't know where funding would come, but like donations, foundations, or fundraisers around the community, look at our homeless people as your original civilians. Not a criminal, not an alcoholic. We didn't choose life to be a homeless person. Now, did we? Agree?
Right.
Okay. So What I say, wanna have this still part of the community, you, everybody, police officers, firefighters, everybody, come together in one community as a civilian. And you help restore this house, make it the way it's supposed to be. And make it a homeless shelter plus treatment center. That's what I suggest you guys do with this jail.
Thank you. Others? Want some of you? There we go. Jennifer Cochran.
Jennifer Cochran. I actually have a logistical question. First of all, since I am not familiar with this myself, what is involved in getting this building onto the National Registry? And one of the options was to sell it. Are there restrictions, if it's on the National Registry, are there restrictions to whom we can sell it? Anyone, I don't know who would be able to answer that.
She spent a long time talking to us about those very items. Mark, you remember better.
Yeah, so there's a nomination / application process to put a building on the National Registry. It's an investment. It's not a huge investment, $6,000 or $8,000 to hire a professional who does those type of nominations. And
12 months?
yeah, it takes time. Could it be sold? Sure, it could be sold even after it was that was done. Some of the comments around that concept, if that was something the commission wanted to pursue, was conservation easements that protect the building's integrity even after the ownership went to somebody else. So there are tools that communities, places, developers use to protect the history of the building, but allow it to flourish, I guess, in private hands.
She said it's very common to put extensive easements on the buildings that they can't do this, they get, a huge list. And she does that. Obviously, she'd like us to commission her to take over, but she has led many communities in their buildings to get the historic designation. I don't know, seems reliable and wonderful, and if you read her whole report, it's quite impressive.
I'm sorry, did you say the report is on the
It's on
city
this, it
website?
just went on tonight.
Is it under community development or?
It's under documents and forms, and then you hit the community development tab, and then it's under plans and guides.
Okay, thank you.
Others, please.
Hi, I'm Melinda Van Hock. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. Definitely been waiting for this moment for the jail. That was definitely quite the desire. I say don't sell it. Don't tear it down. It's got definitely a lot of history. Why tear it down? So beautiful. Sit outside, at the church. It's beautiful, just it's got a good, strong presence. Nothing evil. Just go. I say turn it into a shelter. The homeless population here is just it's out of hand. The city, the police, they push them out to another shelter. They don't want to deal with them. I agree with the treatment center. There's a 1016 across the street. Another 1016 treatment center in Midland, which is kind of by Mount Pleasant and M20. Otherwise, you could turn into a bed and a breakfast, and if you want an extra package, they pay it. To know the history to tour, I say don't tear it down. Or just keep it. It's got a lot of history. Why ruin it? It's awfully beautiful, I believe, and it's also Native American land. There's a strong presence there. You should keep it. Don't ruin it.
Thank you.
All I got. Thank you.
I doubt that this commission would vote to take it down. I'd be willing to bet on that. So, but it's the money to keep the outside waterproof so that we can do whatever on the inside, right? You gotta have it dry. Others, please.
Jeremiah Stokes, pleasure to meet you. I see a lot of awesome input and ideas here. I'm sticking with the industry, recreation, and education here. With the 16C across the street, the local historic commissions things, with the very possibility of making a local bazaar or education community center to not only cost the Big Rapids Commission money, but actually be a generating revenue for the city. Maybe create a bazaar on the outside to help generate those funds, do the yard sales. There's plenty of parking to do outdoor movies. Keeping tradition with the bed and breakfast to draw persons from outside the community into the community. Drag Fair State University from their campus into the community closer. And with the safe proximity to the local downtown, I think that would be a tremendous idea to make it a local community gathering spot to do an outdoor bazaar, food courts, things of this nature.
Thank you. Please, more. Yes.
Lisa Moore, preservation and history is extremely important. And I know this area, there's a lot of people that are very talented in this whole community. And I believe if we all work together and we can possibly restore this and everyone come together and help out. And also, there's levels of needs in the community, homeless, right? And then we have addiction that we need to work with. I think all that brought together, we could move forward and hopefully do something with it.
Thank you. Others? Please, Bill.
Bill Chainline, Big Rapids. Couple questions for Michelle maybe you can answer. Through the discussion of the tour, there was talk about an apartment there, someone lives there. And does that person have a lease with the city, and how much revenue does that generate?
Yeah, Bill, I'll jump in there. We have I would say, a unique setup. Lynn and I smile at each other. The city owns the property. There's a contract, an agreement with the Historic Preservation Committee, of which Dr. Garlick, Foster, Lynn,
Mrs. Garlick.
Shirley, are the members. They have Ann, I suppose, right, is on the, and there is they hold the lease with Ann Hoganson, who's the tenant of the one apartment that's there. They collect the rent. How am I going wrong here, folks? I think I've got it. Is that answering your question, Bill?
Is there a lease in place? How much is the lease?
I don't know how much they pay. Ann pays. I don't know the answer to that.
It's on a sliding scale because she does a lot of work for the group. She takes care of the building.
She's the steward of the property, lets people in, that type of thing.
And keeps it clean and keeps track of the different groups that want to use the spaces, and so
Scheduling.
basically she's paying a fairly low rent because it comes with responsibilities.
Does the Historic Commission get the money?
It does.
Or does the city?
The Historic Preservation Society gets the money, and it uses that money for really the basic needs of the building, along with the Berglund House, which the Historic Preservation Society also oversees and also has a renter. So they each have a separate bank account, and there are some thousands of dollars in each of those accounts, but it's enough money to like fix the boiler if it goes out, or it like probably wouldn't even put a new roof on like the Berglund House, right? And so it can cover some basic stuff, but it's not sufficient to do the types of repairs that the old jail needs at this time. Is that accurate?
Well, utilities.
Right.
Just the everyday expenses of.
Yeah, like the whole building has to be heated beyond Ann's apartment. It's an old building, so it's not cheap to heat.
Anything else, Bill? You said you had a couple?
Yeah, just questions too from the walk down of the building. I didn't know if the architectural study, I haven't looked at it, addressed the falling bricks in the chimney. That's a tall chimney. I'd be concerned the bricks could fall and damage the slate roof potentially. And there's a lot of rodent trappings throughout the building too, I noticed. And that first floor closet area below the stairway's got a pretty strong smell of animal rodent urine in it too. I don't know if there's ever been any treatment in the building or not.
Ann would probably be the best one to answer that. I know that the Historic Preservation Society has and continues to contract with various, insect and rodent control companies. It's an old house and it's not lived in everywhere. I grew up in an old house. You're definitely going to get mice. Could it be sealed up better? Sure. I don't think it's exactly infested or anything.
I wasn't,
Yeah,
I saw a lot of droppings, but no traps, that's why I wondered, so.
And we store our materials in one of the jail cells, and we have traps put out, and once in a while we'll catch a mouse, but it's not like overbearing or anything.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Others? Please, Linda.
I'm a transplant up here. I love this town. This is my hometown. Has anybody found what dollar amount it would take? Or is that just kind of secondary to the fact that we need to find out if we're gonna save it or not?
She in that whole report didn't put a dollar value on anything, I don't believe, right? I don't remember seeing one. It'd be quite discouraging, I think, more than likely. The brickwork mainly. John, please.
I'm John Garlick, I'm on the Historic Preservation Commission. And have been active on it for 30 years. And I do the lawn. But, in addition to that, people have come and gone on the commission. There's been a fight since Bob Ferguson basically laid down in front of the bulldozer and said, "You're not gonna take it." When they tore down the courthouse. And they said it had a poor foundation. The story was the stone foundation was 4 feet thick under that courthouse. It was not gonna fall down. So, but it was lost, and we have that box there that isn't adequate anymore, we're gonna tear that down. So, that's when it all started. He was the hero, and he and his wife got the commission going, got the city interested in working with the city, but the city has always taken the position that, as far as I know, Lynn and Hoganson have been the ones that have, and couple other members that have since left, died, were active communicating with the city about what was going on with the jail. There was never any interest in helping us. We had this label of Historic Preservation Commission. And our job was to keep it standing. Getting the roof done by a professional slate worker out of Ann Arbor who came up here. A couple of years replacing and removing and replacing all this different slate, the damaged slate, there's a pile of slate in the garage that's extra. We were able to salvage from other jobs. We put it in pretty good shape. To pay for that and the new boilers that it needed, we had yard sales for several years. Every Labor Day and every Memorial Day, in the front yard. A lot of people attended that. All the wares were donated by the community. And through that, we funded those activities. And you asked, Mr. Mayor, that at our preliminary meeting that we had, well, we're gonna have to give it up. The commission, if the city takes over, we have to give it up. That's what we're doing. We want you to take it over. We want to be give it up. And let it get the care it needs restore it, and find a use for it. And that was the other thing that came up in our discussion was, we gotta have a use for it. It's gotta have a purpose. It can't just be a museum of an old jail. School groups have gone through it, third graders or whatever, every year to see it and talk about the history of it and everything. It needs something more significant to warrant the investment the city's gonna have to make. And the getting grants were key, that's what you're talking about. And it's the attachment of the National Historic Site would enable more grant possibilities and increase the range. There was a timeline we were talking about too. Could take a while to put all this together. You know, this is an initial meeting with the community, getting input, people that have an interest in seeing it preserved. And moving from here to, well, like she outlined the urgent steps and the long-term steps of restoration. And what we have said at our last meeting was, we don't have a lot of time before things start going. And that porch was the key thing. That was ready to fall off. If it fell off, it'd be a whole lot more expensive to restore it than restoring it standing. So, there are ways to do those things. And how we get this going, and hopefully some input come. This input is helpful to inspiring the commission to start investigating and getting the ball rolling. In the meantime, Ann is living there. It has some use. If there was some other purposes, like the homeless shelter or something that's an immediate need that could go in the way it is without doing a lot of renovation, not turning it into apartments, making it more like a dormitory for, just like our Brother's Keeper is. To offer a place other than under the bridge for people to live. And so integrating, whether that's the long-term idea or at least start out with something like that that'll get it used right away and increase that. We had thought one of our projects for the interior was the kitchen, and we had thought of making it commercial ready kitchen for receptions or parties or whatever was going on there. Put a state-of-the-art stove in there. Here's appliance that we got donated. Made it so much more workable. Have a refrigerator that's built for holding trays of food. And then it never really took off from there. Was it a health department issue?
Could have been, I don't know.
Why that was, never really got much interest. It's had some weddings there, son was married there, but minimal involvement. And so just working on phasing the uses as well as phasing the restoration. You don't have to, if you want to, oh, you want to make apartments out of it, you have to rebuild the whole inside and put it, it's all got to be barrier-free, and it's got to be bathrooms and an elevator, all, well, be another way. Before you invest all that money for a few apartments. Large rooms in there. You can see it. It's quite a building. It's not accessible everywhere. The doors aren't wide enough, and my daughter needs accessibility. And there is a ramp on that north entrance that get over the step, and you can actually get into that lower level where the cells are, where the meeting room is. That is accessible. That it's you're left on the stairway. But anyway, there's a lot of complications involved in figuring out a use. Maybe there are uses that would be simple and maybe not the ultimate use for it, but showing life in the place would help bring.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it. How does the community feel if the city manager recommended to the city commission that $200,000 a year from the city budget needs to go to the old jail? What kind of response would we have from the community?
Is it on a rising scale? Is that 200,000 scaled out for years to come with inflation?
Well, we'd have to do something. I mean, it's gonna take big bucks. We all know that. Mark?
And some of that would depend, I think, on what you have to cut to have that money available.
Exactly. And that's what they're gonna look at. You could also try to float a millage, special use.
I did have a suggestion. If he said he had all those slate tiles in the basement, get with Artworks or with the local artists and have them paint on those. And then you can sell those slates, and that would be a good moneymaker that wouldn't, I mean, you've already got the raw materials, so it wouldn't cost a lot. If we can get somebody, set up to do that, it's a pretty easy fundraiser.
Buy a brick.
Jennifer, you were gonna say a minute ago?
Well, the question I have is tell us a little more about the tax incentives if we get onto the National Registry. What can we expect from that?
I'm not in that, I couldn't quote to you there's percentages and things. Linda's done tax credits. I couldn't quote it accurately. There is a program that if you're involved or your property qualifies to the National Registry of Historic Places, that allows you to have federal and state tax credits. And those then are sold as sort of the methodology in terms of raising money to do it, is the way I understand it. I've not done one of those. They did one for the
Jennifer, the expert that was here did not, she just said they're available. We didn't go into it with her, so we're kind of not.
I'm not an expert on that.
Do we have an answer in the back here?
Linda knows about it.
Generic answer. Tax credit deals are very confusing, but in a nutshell, if you qualified, you could sell historic tax credits. So what is a tax credit? It's a credit on your taxes. So banks typically are places that have a big tax liability. So banks, different investors sometimes will buy these tax credits. So like for instance at Nisbet Fairman Residences, we have low income housing tax credits and federal tax credits. So by selling the tax credit to the bank, the investor, they give us a chunk of money that never has to be paid back. And in turn, they get a credit of so much every year for 5 or 10 years, depending on the type of tax credit. So it's all run and regulated through the IRS. So it's a lot more complicated than that, but it would be a way potentially for the city to obtain money, a bunch of money up front to make renovations. But it's also not a fast process. John is right about that. And
Nothing with the government ever is. If the house was on the registry and we had that available, are we still eligible for grants? Do we still apply for grants?
you still apply for grants, whether or not you're on the registry, but you probably wouldn't qualify for historic. There's a couple other ways you can qualify, but the Nisbet and Farron buildings are two of the only buildings in the county that are on that federal registry.
The expert advised that we start that process immediately. If we're not gonna take it down, get the historic designation, right? I think that was her advice.
It was, you're right.
Unless the city were to say, take it down, then there'd be no sense. Do you think people would tolerate using part of the city budget, obviously, then if we just had it, to help preserve the old jail, or would they say, oh, you're just wasting taxpayer dollars? I can hear it, cause I get all those kind of things.
Well, I think the question, a number of people have raised this, that the building needs a purpose. The building needs a purpose, and I think you would be able to make that sell better once that determination was made, then you get people behind it,
Others? Please.
Foster Neal, Big Rapids. I'm on the Historic Preservation Society. I'm also on the Charter Revision Commission, and I'm also on the Parks Board. One, I would like the building to be saved. Two, I would like the building to serve the community and not like a minority or just one or two people, right? So if it was offices, if it was apartments, it's only serving the people that live there or the people that rent it. I'd like it to be at least accessible in some capacity to the community, as it has been for the last 30 plus years. And, sometimes to a greater degree and sometimes to a lesser degree. But, and I do think that the concept of a homeless shelter and along those lines meets that criteria. And I think that there's a need there. So I'm very behind that concept. But those are the two big things to me, is that we save it and that it serves the community at large in some capacity. Because it is special and it holds a lot of special place, I think, for a lot of people in the community. I guess the last thing I would say is no one here so far has said that they want to see it torn down.
Right.
I think there's a strong feeling in the community that it should be saved, and as Jennifer and Dr. Garlick and others have said, that it needs this purpose behind it to serve our community, to make it savable, to make it not just savable, but something that sustains itself. Because when you give it that purpose, right, then there's a reason to keep putting money into it. And I really do hope that we are able to save it and to accomplish that purpose for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Others? Yes, Bill?
Has the city or the Historic Preservation Commission been approached by anyone that has an interest in purchasing a building at any time?
Mark?
No, I haven't talked to anybody. I don't think that's been widely thought of as an option. I don't know whether the Historic Commission has heard that. I have not talked to anybody about that.
Others? Please, Maureen.
Maureen Nelson. I don't live in the city. Sometime here, live in Big Rapids Township, but I grew up down on the river. And I run the genealogy office in Big Rapids, work across the river. So I've always been kind of looking at different places, and people at the museum through the years have said, oh, you should move over to the museum, but they didn't really have room, and the library once, but they didn't have room, and then and we've accumulated a lot of stuff. So I went through the jail one time, just the first floor, and they showed me the room, but that's where AA meets, and I'm like, there was nothing secure, so, but we would love to be in that area by the museum and the courthouse where people come from. We get people from all over the country that come to our office, but we just have, you know, too much stuff to fit in a little room, and she suggested the jail cells, but we can't shove everything in a jail cell, so, and it has to be secure, because it's, you know, some sensitive stuff and, you know, a lot of paperwork, and it can't be leaked, you know, if there's leaks and all that kind of stuff, but that's why we came to kind of see what it was about. But the only room that would be good is the one way upstairs, but I can't see some of the people climbing clear up there to look at our, you know, we hardly get many locals anyway, so I don't think they're gonna come upstairs to see all we have, but I hope they do save it though.
Thank you, Maureen. Others? Don, you haven't said a thing today.
I was wondering, it would be great if you could get rid of all those old cells in there. I know that's the jail, right? But I mean, those are that's a good place to have another room be available, and you don't have to go up those stairs. Different height steps and everything else, so.
Yeah.
I mean, the food co-op used to work there.
Down the basement, right?
I used to cut cheese
Cut
there.
cheese in the basement, right?
I mean, Lindsay and I patched the walls in the basement, right, and whitewashed all those walls, right? So, and built a bunch of the shelves that we had in there for the food co-op. But then the food industry changed, the grocery industry changed, and you could buy more than just white bread in the grocery stores. It wasn't that way when we came here in '76. You get Wonder Bread in every grocery store, but nothing else. We, in essence, did such a good job of changing the grocery industry that we put ourselves out of business.
There you go.
It was okay with us, because we're.
I'm gonna pick out names
Getting
tonight.
tired of
Nancy, you haven't said a word, and you know this industry a bit.
I don't really know that much about historic preservation. I was part of the historic preservation when the churches wanted to take that building down for parking.
Oh.
So, that was in the early 70s, I think. It was a long time ago. But, yeah, it's, I agree with you. I think it should be saved, but it certainly needs a purpose. And for over 50 years, it hasn't really found a purpose.
I see
Can't
that.
think of one either.
It's hard. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I think that there's been a number of ideas that have been.
An art center might be nice, but then, you know, we have artworks for that. I might object to that. They have a lot of space there. Yeah, I told Fred when I walked up to the building, and I said, how many times do we have to save this building? But it has been over 50 years.
Michelle was telling the commission that great percentage of the grant money is for housing. Is that what you explained to us, Michelle?
I mean, in general, right now, there's lots
That's
of
what's
grant
hot.
money, housing's hot.
But as Foster said, well, there'd be
That'd be
2,
a
3
hard.
people getting advantage of the old jail, none of us would see it again.
I mean, I think a homeless shelter is a type of housing. And I think that the best ideas, to me, are the ideas that require the least amount of work. So if you wanted to turn it into apartments, and you're gonna have to install multiple bathrooms, multiple kitchens, potentially an elevator, you're talking about tearing out walls that are structural, load-bearing walls to get 3 apartments out of it.
It's kind of
Or like a couple of studios. I mean, it's just, so whereas I think something like a homeless shelter or the bazaar idea, you know, we're gonna have to do renovations. We're gonna have to make changes. But do we have to make the most significant changes, or can we find something that it lends itself a little bit more? Let's make the fewer changes to give it a long life, right? That serves the community.
And you do have a ramp that goes into the kitchen, but going into the big room that we use, if those cement things could just be sloped so that they could be handicap accessible. I mean, I know hauling sewing machines up them is a pain. I can't imagine trying to do a wheelchair. And it seems like that door would be pretty close to 36, so you might be able to handicap that door as well, and then they've got that level without having to go upstairs.
Linda Telfer, you know I was gonna grab you, born and raised, live in the city. What do you think?
Yes, I live in the city and I definitely think it should be safe, but I'm kind of with everybody else, it needs a purpose. I just don't know what that purpose is. There's definitely a need for meeting rooms and spaces in town, because there is not very many. I'm in organizations that are always looking for places. But it's not handicapped accessible.
That's the big issue. Please, back in the back.
Lisa again, I just want to add to with the homeless shelter, the other ideas that we're throwing around. A soup kitchen is also very important, because I know I've worked in one before, and you have people who are just on Social Security who can't even afford, you know, the light bill, electric bill, and food, and I know those kind of people would come to a homeless shelter to eat, or get something to eat for the week, or for, you know, once or twice a week.
Does anybody know if the Salvation Army's gonna start their soup kitchen, Mark? They were talking about it, I haven't heard.
They've talked about it, and I think they have those plans. I haven't heard them lately.
Others? If you're interested in being on a committee, an early committee, stop and talk to our city clerk, Tammy Gillis, and give her your name and number. And the city commission has to decide if we're going to, which way we're going. Is that it, Mark? You got anything else you want?
No, you did it, man. Thank you.
Anybody? Going once? Oh, I almost did it to you.
How much does this building cost in the city now?
Yeah, we have this sort of hands-off approach, as Dr. Garlick had described.
He pointed that out, yeah.
It's not.
It would be, when Lynn calls me and needs something, then we try to make it happen. And that system has gotten us a long ways, but it hasn't worked.
Hasn't helped the building too much.
Right, so is there a big cost to the city right now? No.
It's almost nothing.
Yeah, it's
Pretty near.
almost nothing, but.
Except the deterioration of the building's not nothing.
Yeah, well, I just mean that like, when we say you help out from time to time.
I had a person maintenance. I had a
$1,000 every 5 years.
No.
A city
that's not
resident
true.
came to me and said, this is an easy fix.
Yeah,
Use the
no,
marijuana money to keep the old jail up and going.
Okay.
Yeah, painting, furnaces, things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not like.
And the county will give us theirs too, and then we can do it all in 5 years.
There you go.
Well, we need to find a purpose, otherwise it'll turn into a dispensary.
Please, in the back.
Zach. I know most people in here are all religious, Catholics, Christians, and in the Bible it says, help thy neighbor, right? That's one of the main amendments for that Bible, for the people's religions. Homeless people are your guys' neighbor, whether you like to admit it or not. And the fact that you don't really practice the Bible the way it's supposed to be practiced, I'm not saying anybody here, saying in general, but help thy neighbor, meaning make that jail into a homeless shelter with the treatment center. Yeah, there can also be as a soup kitchen. It's minimal, it's acceptable, and it'll also help with bringing profit to your guys' community, no matter if you want to look at it as up or down. So, practice good religion, help thy neighbor, help the homeless. Because you don't want to scrape up dead, frozen bodies off the ground, do you? Do you? No? No? You want to help people. This is what this community is about, right? Your main saying is, you'll love it here, right? Well, help the homeless. So you ain't scraping dead people off the ground because they're frozen to death, because they ain't got a home.
Gotcha. Karen?
Are we at unscheduled business?
Oh dear, not yet. We haven't finished this yet.
All right.
I'm gonna call it on this issue. Everybody okay? Now we're on unscheduled business. You better not have any, I can tell you that.
Mayor, I have one thing, just one. It's not really for any conversation or discussion, just wanted to clarify publicly that the city commission does not have a public meeting with Big Rapids Township on Wednesday night. There is no meeting that we were involved with. It is not our meeting. That's it.
No background, you don't have to give it, but
Nah.
good enough.
So no one from the city will be at that meeting?
Yes,
Will Chief Schroeder be at that meeting?
yes.
There will, members of the city staff will be in the audience.
We were not invited,
It is not our meeting.
Okay.
but they
Clarification.
put on the announcement that the city officials would be there before we were ever even knowing about it.
And that it was also a joint meeting, which it is not.
Thank you for that.
I would like to defend the township. I can't.
And on that note.
Anything else anyone has, please, anyone? Turn.